away with the democratic value because what we thought, like we should walk after the adult in order to do something to protect us, to prevent the dog to bite you. You have to follow the leader, for example. That's not democratic value. So I propose that we should look at the social quality, the consequences of democracy. Look at democracy, not only the process like election, but look at the substance of democracy that include good governance, human rights, human dignity that the former session mentioned about. And the consequences of this should look at the instead of quality of life, but looking at social quality, the concept that the expert, the academic from Europe introduced that starting from socioeconomic security. Without socioeconomic security, the people will not care about democracy at all. They look at their own money. And then the social cohesion, that means the trust and the member in civil society, they make the people have tied together. And then social inclusion, this is very important. The former session mentioned a lot about dignity, equity. So social inclusion is very important in ASEAN, I think, because it leads to human rights practice and equity coming. And also, since we are very pluralist, and so the social inclusion is very important. In order to achieve it, we need social empowerment. So, what we should do is empowering uh, the democratization in this country in order that we achieve sustainable peace. Before having sustainable peace, we need sustainable development. And in order to achieve sustainable justice, without sustainable justice, we never achieve sustainable peace. So that's I would like to mention.
So today I'm going to talk about how East Asia view the influence of America. Because in East Asia we are political power. China grows and more intertwined. America is the big democracy that is far away. The economically, they are we have exported to the United States. So and we know that it's well known in Eurasia country that is around Russia. They have the most pro-American population in the world. So it's, in a similar fashion, we can see that there are many countries that surround China. The people there are quite pro-American. So we are going to discuss the, is the case and what the role liberal democratic value play. And people with higher liberal democratic value tend to have a negative image of China or positive image of the United States. If we run see the correlation between the two, the people's democratic value and their perception of the United States, if you take the country average, so then we will see there's no clear relationship between the people democratic value and their perception because they have some country they are quite liberal, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong. They are tended to have a more negative view of China and the positive view of the United States. But we also can find the less liberal part of Asia and Cambodia. They are also people there tend to also have a negative view of China and the positive view of the United States. So probably there are other factors they are coming to play. So like in Northeast Asia, probably people that very value is important because the institutional difference but they are also, of course, other historical background. In this less democratic part of the region, and they probably is not driven by liberal democratic values, but probably their fear of China, investment from China, the worry about sovereignty. So if we look into individual countries, and we will find that people there who are more liberal in each country tend to be hold a more negative view of China, and this is pretty much the case in either the more liberal part of the region, like Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and also in the more less free part of the Cambodia, Myanmar, Vietnam. And for the middle part, the country with some kind of hybrid region, or the country with the medium liberal democratic value, they tend to also people there for the high liberal democratic value tend to have a more negative view of China, but the degree are much smaller. So this is quite consistent across the East Asia. For example, in Taiwan, that people who are liberal have a more liberal democratic value tend to hold a more negative view of China, and they tend to think that the government, because the past few years, Taiwan government are more pro-China policy, they are more friendly to China. They think that the supervision of government is not enough, so they want to have more supervision. Government isn't done, it's not done enough. Probably they should go to the street or even do something aggressive to stop the closer relationship. So that's the one part. Another part is about United States, and the East Asians feel about United States is more divergent, and in general they are favor the presence of the United States, but the liberal have slightly different view. The liberal view in the liberal part of the region, like and South Korea, they tend to be on average they still have they favor the presence of the United States, but they are more cautious about the difference of the United States than those with low democratic value there. Because probably I think it's because of the U.S. troops, U.S. Army, those two countries, so they think American interest is a potential threat to their sovereignty. And for countries that also have high democratic value like Taiwan and Hong Kong, China poses a serious threat to their existence. So the people with high democratic value in this region tend to favor U.S. presence in this region. And finally, the countries that are less liberal, they they tend to view the U.S. more favorably because those countries like Cambodia, Myanmar, Vietnam, they are economically relatively weak compared to mainland China. They are adjacent to mainland China, either land territories. So they feel the threshold very clear. And on the other hand, they don't have this moment. They don't have U.S. troops in their country, so U.S. does not pose a threat to their sovereignty. They welcome the liberal people who hold a high liberal democratic value and to welcome its presence in this region. And finally, we see the country with the hybrid regime, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, they are interesting because they are not the first tier countries around China. They are second tier. So they are the threat from mainland China that is not that strong. So the people hold a high liberal democratic value. They do not see China's interest very negative. But on the other hand, they are more likely, also likely to think the interest of America negative. Because to them, China is the threat is not very serious. They are second tier. So that's why they have some cautious view of the president. So I just summarize using the Asian barometer value data to divide it the region, sub-region to see how liberal democratic value affect people's choice between the two superpower, one is democratic, one is authoritarian regimes. And but the one we often miss is the role of China itself, because China is also in East Asia. There are so many people, and from the data show that Chinese actually has very high democratic value. The surveys conducted in 2015. If you compare to countries like other countries, Mongolia, those in democracy, Chinese people actually has higher democratic value, but just that their political system tighten their control. So how to engage with Chinese people might be the important task for us, for also the equal power country. Probably we should not only think about United States, we also need to, and also we not only need to think about United States and how to contain China, probably we should even think more about how to engage Chinese people because they are free, they are people-minded, how to contact them and to make change.
Okay, hi. Thanks, King, for letting me know that. um, uh, hi, I'm Ira from Ideas Malaysia. I'm going to try and simplify this and keep my points, make two main points. So the first thing, um, the roots of democratic values in Malaysia. I think we need to go back to history and to how Malaysia was gain our independence to gain some kind of understanding of this. So in Southeast Asia, I think Malaysia stands out amongst the very few former British colonies and that gained our independence in 1957. And independence was, generally given to us by the British in cooperation with the Malay elite then, which was the United Malays National Organization (UMNO), which is the dominant political party in the National Front Coalition, Barisan Nasional, and this this um, this way of getting independence, which was through compromise and not through revolutionary bloodshed like some of our other neighbors, is something that Malaysians and UMNO is very proud of until today. Although arguably that there was only one side of the independence story in Malaysia, and the our founding father Tunku Abdul Rahman, who was our first prime minister, he was very much an Anglophile, educated in Cambridge, and very much influenced by these values of individual liberty, liberal democracy, which is fitting to his training in Cambridge as a lawyer. And despite this, he realized at the time, because of the context of how Malayan society was at the time, that there was a need to compromise this because there was a majority Malay population at the time who I like to borrow Nishan's phrase, which I like, who felt colonially victimized. So this colonial victimization mentality of the Malay population at the time, who felt, we are the natives of this land, but then you guys, the British, brought in mass numbers of Chinese and Indians, to work in the tin mines and in the rubber tapping industry, and that that gave the Chinese population, especially, a significantly a higher position economically compared to the majority Malays, who the British really aimed for them to serve in the public administration of the country. So he realized this at the time, and the UMNO grassroots was also very restless and very against the idea of an egalitarian Malaya, which put the Malays, Chinese, Indians, and the indigenous communities at same level. So our constitution was constructed around this. Article 153 of the Malaysian constitution until today prescribes a special position for the Malays, which says that entitles Malays to quotas in public service, in public education. It has now expanded to a whole load of other different affirmative action policies. And the Malay language was made the national language of the Federation. Although it is, despite that, it is common to see today many Malaysians who are not Malay, Chinese Malaysians or Indian Malaysians who are not fluent in the national language, and I think there is some, uh, I don't know, maybe some failure in the formation of a national identity there. Islam was also made the religion of the federation in the constitution at the time, and there was a lot of contention on this. But again, this was done for practical reasons. They had to appeal to the context of the time, and I think also unique to maybe to Malaya at the time compared to the region, the position of the monarchy stayed intact. So Malaysia is also unique in the sense that we have 9 royal families, one for each. The states in the federation, and we have one king that rotates every 5 years among 9 families. So the monarchy remained intact, and even when the British came to Malaya, uh, they struck a deal with the sultans and sort of left Islamic and Malay affairs to them, and the British would then go on to collect taxes and such from the local population. So this is important, I think, to take into account when we talk about Malaysia's democratic values. So the monarchy is of course a constitutional monarchy under a parliamentary democracy, but Malaysia still remains very much a feudal society where criticism of the monarchy is could land you in jail, and is really not something that people generally discuss openly. So secondly, I would like to say something about the formal democracy that Malaysia has enjoyed until today. So, as many of you probably know, the National Front coalition led by UMNO then have been ruled Malaysia for all of our independent history up until the most recent elections. And for all intents and purposes, we have enjoyed a formal democracy. We've had elections every 5 years. Transitions of power, although it hasn't been for different political parties, but every time we had elections, were generally accepted the results, never be violent uprisings or anything like that. So these formal structures of democracy exist. And then in the 1980s, which was the beginning of Mahathir's 1.0 rule, many of the civil liberties that Malaysians, I think, relatively enjoyed before started getting eroded. There was a 1988 judicial crisis where the chief justices of the Supreme Court got sacked because they basically came up with a ruling that the administration was happy with, so that created a constitutional crisis. And many argue that the judiciary has been covered until today. Freedom of the media was also severely curtailed. Many of the mainstream newspaper outlets were bought over by political parties. UMNO currently owns the number one Malay newspaper in the country, and you know, at the time also many opposition leaders and activists were jailed under the Internal Security Act, which allows for detention without trial. So we see some backsliding then, which then continued on, I think, until the recent election. So just going to add a bit more on affirmative action. So in 1969, we had racial riots that it was mainly a Malay versus Chinese riots that broke out in the city, and many innocent lives were lost. And then as a result of that, the UMNO government saw the need to really they saw the need to really uplift Malays from this disadvantageous economic position. So they enacted the new economic policy MEP, which one of the aims was to increase Bumiputra equity in the stock market, and the NEP also introduced many other affirmative action policies, which should have ended in 1990, but many of the policies have gone. So the NEP is also another big source of tension within Malaysia until today. And then on May 9th, 2018, the opposition coalition, now the government, finally won the elections, and UMNO was out of power for the first time in 60 years. There are many reasons for this. During the Q&A, we can get into that if you're interested to know. But currently, we're already seeing some backlash, I think, from Malaysians who are not very comfortable with this new government's more multiracial, pluralistic nature. One of the component parties in the current coalition in power is the predominantly Chinese party, the Democratic Action Party, which has its roots from the Singapore's PAP, the People's Action Party. So there's been some backlash with the ratification of the International Convention of Elimination of Racial Discrimination, ICER. Many Malays are afraid that will erode their rights in the constitution, and I remain cautious with this, and yes, so I think that's roughly what I would have to say about Malaysia. Looking forward to this
So thank you very much to the panel for really a wide-ranging discussion already. The discussion has already covered several levels from from the examination of core values, what has been chosen to glue societies together, the issue of therefore the ethnic diversity, religious diversity, countries, and the choice that and how does that affect has become the nation. And therefore, when we juxtapose this or explore this in relation to values of democracy that have been discussed earlier, like plurality, rights, and inclusion, which it was stressed was very important that this be understood in terms of the local context, and that therefore it was perhaps an important role of the middle power countries to help bring about this interpretation, translation between what has been developed, seen as developed Western values for democracy in relation to the local context in which this need to become relevant. The issue of that this, of course, needs to translate into how the state has been formed, what is the constitution of the state, and the governance practice that is now in place, and several issues raised particularly by Chan of how it is important that bureaucracies are formed, updated, improved as it has been happening already in other countries and contexts. The need to look at the judiciary, corruption, and old habits, what has been mentioned, most political values that are there, and this, how are these affecting the democratic practices and governance that we are seeking to push, the need for social inclusion, empowerment, and maybe the need for affirmative action about social and empowerment. Put this into the broader context of ASEAN as a particular community uh, with more shared platforms. And then finally, examining this in the context of juxtaposition between China and the United States. The categories, relating this to the categories of, of values, of perspectives, of policy, different policy, their, how they therefore China and the United States. So we would like to deepen this discussion further on any of these levels, the exploration of what is in fact the local context, the local values that are there, to the sub Asian communities that are in fact, and again, it's like the issue of the United States and China is what really for some of us are saying so important. It is apparently going to be part of this discourse. So we open now the, the, the floor for discussion. Please identify yourself, your institution, and if you want to direct your question to someone. I will dig deep from the margin, so we start there. And then we will, yeah, the first, and then we will, since we have not had a woman on the floor. So, yes,
My name is John. I'm a journalist, PhD scholar. I'm from Myanmar. I don't agree with that. People are satisfied with the government. Let them lead the country. Let them do the government. I don't think people are satisfied. But people just realize it was made by who hold the power, made the format of democracy. It's just a form, but it's not functioning in any country in Asia. So I don't agree with this. I can make many statistics, not, not to make statistics, not satisfied. And another problem is uh, uh, a lot of civil society, as Sri Lanka said, they don't like NGO. Because in Asia, a lot of NGO has problem. It's a kind of only showcase. I can see a lot of NGO like the same face, same person all the time, So it's not really changing the democracy, not really functioning. And many network regional organizations, they are doing with those NGO because it's easy to work. So that is the problem of civil society, NGO issue. So in my suggestion, we have to really change all these those it's a kind of civilian dictatorship. We have to change those. Then we can really can function. Like we can rely on like either power from Japan, Australia, and really making a good network that we can take.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Anissa, and I'm from Indonesia. Currently, I'm studying the PhD program of TSIS of Korea University. since you are mostly from Southeast Asia, because I'm also from Southeast Asia, so I want to note about the current rising of religious politics in most of the countries, especially in my country, like hot issues, especially that we have upcoming elections next year. Do you think that is like some people say that Islam and Muslim is Islam rising in my country? Islam is not like the opposite sides of democracy, but some people say that, especially the radical side, say that this democracy is not produced by the Prophet Muhammad already didn't teach us about that in the Quran, so it's like it's created by the kafir people in the Western. So it's like the opposite side of democracy. It's kind of, there are many people like the radicals want to keep that kind of campaigning that democracy is bad. Do you think it kind of work for some people? They kind of agree with that, and that become like one of the reasons why there are hashtags like 2009 change the president, and they support the other candidate for that kind of reasons. So what do you think about that kind of race religion in terms of is it democracy or it can go hand in
And you take one more.
Uh, Thank you. Moderator. I am Narayan. I am from Nepal. I am a fellow student in Eaidomāsia연구원님 University. My question, my question doesn't indicate to any panelist what is the concern to all. I have a bit different perspective of this democratic value. I just focused on the uh, uh, effect of the internet technology or social media, social networking media in changing the value of a democratic value. Because we found that sometimes social media or social networking site has a strong or powerful effect in the ballot box because it creates moral tension or moral effect to the politician for the accountability. So how we scholar are searching for the new democratic value which create or affected by the social media. What types of democratic value we have to think about that because the coverage of the social media is very huge and democratic value which depends on the relies on the election. It creates accountability every 4 or 5 years. But the role of the social media creates value within 1 hour. So what types of democratic value we have to think about and we have to make a politician accountable? That is my question. Thank you.
Thank you. We just 2 minutes. We can pick up any other questions. For satisfaction with democracy, civil society, that, religious sector.
I have lots of people from the US come to me and say, how are you dealing with fake news? Okay. And my response is very simple. Actually, it's not such a problem in our countries the way it is in the US, because for the US it's a new problem. We have always lived with fake news. We have never trusted our media. The sources of the fake news problem emerges not because we live in a post-truth society, that's a complete mistake in thinking, but because sources of legitimacy have lost legitimacy. And when there are no sources of legitimacy to anchor what people believe, then people tend to believe all sorts of things. And from Asia, I'm very accustomed to being that being the norm. Rumors and other things are very powerful in shaping democratic or societal outcomes.
and social media just gives it a different flavor. And it's not all bad. Social media is the one channel, the democratizing channel that we have to challenge the government's control over mainstream media and the message. And it is a very important channel, so much so that government is trying to control social media today in our country as well, and invest a lot in social media. So I think we have a very different experience of social media from the West, and we mustn't be allowed to color our interpretation just because of the problem that the Americans had with the election of Donald Trump. It brings me to the importance of discourse. That democracy must be seen fundamentally as government through conversation. I was happy to hear that Ambassador Takasu worked with Amartya Sen. He was my teacher in philosophy, so small generation. Yeah. And Amartya Sen introduced the idea that democracy is not just public balloting, but public reasoning. And public reasoning requires, actually, first of all, better data and information infrastructure. So the problem of famines went away partially because of better data, better information that got created in democratic societies, and also because society was able to talk about the famine and get upset about it, and get upset with government, not because the people who suffered famine, voted against the government. So really, I think talking about how middle powers can help build better data infrastructure, but also build values like right to information. India's right to information bill really helps Sri Lanka pass it, because we wouldn't have passed it just because Western countries had it. We are the post-colonial mindset says we are happy to imitate Asian countries, and that's socially more legitimate than imitating the West. And so the RTI success in India have helped Sri Lanka to pass RTI, and that's having enormous value. And I think that discourse can't be limited just to inside the country. Now, Asian countries have this idea that, oh, we mustn't interfere in your country, we won't tell you what to do. But the value of discourse is that we tell each other what we think. We tell each other what our values are. And the impartiality, the objectivity that comes from somebody external reflecting on what they think about you is so important. So I would say middle powers need to change this approach and not simply say, oh, we don't interfere, we don't tell you about values, we only give you money, we only give you investment, and start, if they do have democratic values, start expressing them and expressing concern around democratic norms and democratic institutions, which currently they are abdicating that responsibility and leaving it to the West. I'll stop there for the moment.
I think I'll address your question, Anissa, right, about religious politics. That's always a tough one, but I think Malaysia and Indonesia, we can sort of relate to that experience coming from Southeast Asia with the majority Muslim population country. My opinion is that politics guided by religious values, whatever that religion may be, like Islam or Christianity or Buddhism, is fine. And in fact, I would say that there is a value to that. But I think the problem in our societies, and I see this both in Malaysia and in Indonesia, is when the state uses religion as a tool to intimidate or to assert power, which then becomes the problem. So I think you were probably referring to when the whole Ahok crisis happened in Indonesia, and that was quite surprising to me actually. Not living in Indonesia, because I've always seen Indonesia as more sort of the discourse around Islam has also been more vibrant, I think, than in Malaysia. But then I think there was also a lot of politics behind the Ahok riots, where it was argued that his opponent at the time was the one who was behind this whole issue with him and the so-called blasphemy case. And sharing from my experience in Malaysia, and where where I explain about Islam being the religion of the federation, which is prescribed in the constitution, and then no one actually really knows what that means, and there's been so little discourse on between the different races, religions, and races about what that means actually, because then now you see a situation where a predominantly Malay government, and we also have an Islamist party who then bandies this Islam as a religion federation around the place, saying that this validates whatever it is that we are trying to do. So this validates the Islamization of our education system and many other things that have caused a lot of dissatisfaction. So so I would say politics guided by religion, but I'm very hesitant to agree with any constitutionally mandated official religion anywhere. So thank you.
Going to answer the questions, but I would like to add something apart from the asking only question with democracy, but for Asian barometer survey, we dig deeply into the authoritative oriented or oriented, but we see some change in the value of the people in Asia, especially ASEAN, like Thailand. The people seem to be more authoritative oriented than before. So that's problematic that we have to consider. And we found that the young generation has less democratic value than the seniority, and the people living in Bangkok have more authoritative value than the people living in the rural area, for example. That's why I propose that we should look at the support for democracy based on the substance. Like we should look at civic education. So what the mature democracy country can support us is by strengthening civic education in this country and learn from the best practice in those countries, and also strengthening civil society in promoting civic education instead of protest against the government, because it creates more conflict. So why not looking at deliberative democracy? Actually, I think that's work in the rural area and let the people learn about democratic practice without telling them what is democracy. And then that will dig deeply into their heart. That means not only use head or knowledge or wisdom, but they use heart, that's the relationship with the people, compassion, legitimacy, and compassion, and then have inclusiveness idea. So I think that will work, and will be the good collaboration among the countries toward with the power and the young people.
People democratic value. When I make my presentation, we make presentation, we use the Asian barometer survey. We have a battery about people democratic value, which basically has attitude about constraint of government power, the judicial independence, the civil society organization, free from state control, how about strong leader, designing this kind of question. This kind of question are designed actually during the authoritarian transition period in those regions that we want to ask people their attitude about the power of the executive. They want to we want to have people to express how they want to constrain the power of the executive. But I don't think they are quite enough right now, because now I think with the popularity of social media, we need to emphasize more on tolerance, because tolerance is not included in our category of the value. So how we tolerate people with different views, I think that's important. And I think they should be probably included in the school education, probably in our future studies, how to be more inclusive, how to be more inclusive. Yeah, yeah, also to consider it.
Thank you. We have 3 minutes left. We'll take. Anyway, how many more hands? So we do the last 3 and then give one. Yes.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time, discussion and conversation about the values of the democracy. First of all, I'm David Tai from Myanmar. Now January one university. So I would like to make a question. I have so many questions, but I only one question about as of the time constraint. So I would like to address to Mr. Nisha, so from Sri Lanka, so about your very good, very informative contribution during the discussion. And so my question is concerned with the pluralism and rights, and also the core value of the democracy. And so, how about your, I want to know your opinions. So, how about your hard infrastructure and soft infrastructure? So, it's up for discussion. So, these infrastructures are very correlated, very closely interrelated with each other. So, for example, now I'm studying an e-government or an e-government implementation. So there might be connectivity, democracy, and flexibility. These are the very correlated. So is concerned with the hard infrastructure and soft infrastructure. So productivity, democracy, and flexibility are very correlated. So I would like to know about your opinions of which ones shall we put the first priority, or whether it is in hard infrastructure or soft infrastructure, the core values of. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. And then how many more hands?
Thank you, moderator. I don't think mine is a question, but maybe a contribution. I'm Richard from the same Sangubwan University. I think the quality of any democratic institution depends on their success in balancing unity and diversity, in balancing coordination and unit autonomy. At the same time, the ability to act in coherent and purposeful way, and at the same time respect and accommodate legitimate diversity. In our quest to come up with democratic unity in Asia, I think we should give more attention to these issues of diversity, these issues of unit autonomy. There should be more discourse, there should be more discussions on these fronts so that we can be able to integrate them and be able to move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mohammed Taisi. And my question is to my dear friend Nishad Sir. The language both of us are speaking has not been taught by any of the Asian countries. Culture is not a static thing. Gone are the days that women are considered in our societies that they are double burden. Women questions, and all of these three questions have a very solid class issue, class based, in fact. Therefore, would you agree with me that there's no such thing as a static culture? Therefore, saying that is it appropriate to say that if anything is from the West, especially the clothes you're wearing and myself too, these are not Asian clothes. They're all Western. And the first time ever in my life I saw bidet, that was in Sri Lanka, not in Australia. Right? So the point I'm trying to, my question again is, I think this is high time we should look at our own histories, cultures, moral values, ethics, in slightly a different manner. Thank you very much.
will now, and this will be your conclusion, respond to the questions and the comments, and maybe have one kind of suggestion on how we move forward from this particular.
Of course, it's a truism. There's no such thing as static culture. Culture means automatically something that is dynamic and evolving all the time. What I'm trying to do is to point out some unique properties that we experience in our own context and in Asia that may not be known to the West for sure, and where what we are calling middle powers may have had to struggle with in a different way, and see more evolution or dynamism than we have experienced ourselves. Okay, so in Sri Lanka, for the longest time, women could not go to a boys' school, even their son's school, without dressing in a very particular way. And there was appropriate dress for women. And this was until 2 years ago till we fought it and changed it. This lasted 20 odd years. And we fought it on social media, by the way, and won that debate. And the government changed it. So I can give you umpteen amount of examples. I don't want to do that now, where we exhibit characteristics that are different and that need to be addressed in a democratization process of changing values. Of course, I also agree with you that democratic values aren't Western values. So the argumentative Indian by Sen is saying that in our roots and in our history and in our culture, we will find values that support democracy. That's exactly what I'm saying. That we should work to translate our history and our culture and relate it to democratic values without looking for the path and the evolution of the process of translation and thinking that has been adopted only in the West, which doesn't sit well with our own history and culture. Not that our history and culture is against democracy, it's just that it needs a different translation into democratic values. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Coming to your question about soft infrastructure and hard infrastructure, my argument has been, I think, that both are needed. The way I've argued for hard infrastructure is that you can't simply advance democracy if it doesn't also advance actual lived outcomes of people. So when the West had to fight communism, it built a welfare state. Because really the attraction of communism was very much the fact that the poor were attracted to communism. They still are in our society. And the welfare state was a response. So democracy can't be only about process. It also must be about outcomes. And if the outcomes are not getting delivered, or the outcomes are being expropriated or exploited, then our democracy has a problem, and we must link democracy more to outcomes. So hard infrastructure becomes quite valuable in doing that. But man shall not live by bread alone. The hard infrastructure we build does not translate to a society that is more free, and freedom is of intrinsic value, a society that is more just, and a society that promotes the common good without values that enable us to care about the other, that link us to the marginalized in terms of our empathy, in terms of how we vote. We cannot be just self-interested in the way we vote. We have to care about those who are marginalized in society. We have to create openness for democracy to work. That's a value. Asian cultures tend to be not only hierarchical, but quite closed. There's a view in the Sri Lanka's Board of Investment that to do business with the Japanese, you need to have a secretive, closed culture, because Japanese like to make deals, whereas the West likes to play by rules. This may be completely wrong, but we have this myth about Asian culture that needs to be challenged and changed. And the soft infrastructure is changing that value system in a way that fosters freedom, fosters justice, and fosters the common good. And you can't just do it on the hard alone, but both are needed. So thank you for asking that question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll take that the time that's needed, but please think of the right.
Okay, so just some short concluding remarks. I think with Malaysia's story, overnight, Malaysia sort of became this new beacon of hope and democracy in the region and in the world, with all this democratic backsliding going on. Even in our region, I always feel when I hear King and her brave struggle in the Philippines. And Philippines, of course, was such an icon in democracy in Southeast Asia in the 80s. But I would like to just say that moving forward, I really hope that the more fundamental aspects of our nation will get sort of not solved. I don't think you can solve them in one or two terms, but at least we can have a national conversation about it. Start to have a more mature national conversation about things like affirmative action. What does Malay rights mean? What does Islam as the official religion of the federation mean? In our march towards becoming a more open society, I think this is absolutely crucial, and we must not take the electoral victory for granted, because changing governments is one thing, and of course that's one step. But then, how do we sort of get that to trickle down to the more fundamental aspects of our society? So, and I hope to see that as well with our neighbors in the region. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I just would like to propose the minimum contribution. That is democratic governance. With our foundation of democracy, Thailand will suffer with another coup again. So, what I would like to ask our friends of power countries to help is that help strengthening the foundation of especially democratic value by supporting the way of practice like the human rights practice, gender equality practice, pluralism practice. That can be the example for the governance in the future.
Reiterate the importance of engaging with Chinese people. And, I remember 1989 when the famous Russian literature Nobel laureate. His name is very difficult to pronounce. Try here. That's Soronisky, right? He came to Taiwan, and at that time, Taiwanese people always worried about can we survive? China is so powerful, and he told us this talk that the most important guarantee of Taiwan's security is not a weapon or any guarantee from the United States, but it's how Chinese people think, their attitude toward Taiwan. They know democracy, they know freedom, then you are safe.
So thank you. We are a bit over time, but I think it has been a conversation that has filled our minds. We have more questions at the end of the session than before we came in. I think that's a good sign, because it means that there will be more conversations going. I think we have more questions. The need to understand more, talk among ourselves, understand more what being legal power is about, what fledgling or troubled democracies are going through. The need to connect all of this to understand better the connections between democratic politics, good governance, and outcomes, because it's a virtuous cycle that has to happen, which needs social inclusion in terms of class, ethnicity, gender, and generation. Old and young have to talk more. And how do we really educate for this so that civic education is not just something that falls into a box and in the end people really don't understand what democracy is. So I hope this has been a worthwhile discussion. I hope our resolve from here is that yes, we need to talk more middle powers among themselves, pledge democracies among ourselves, and then across we need to really learn more how to defend, restore in some cases, how to strengthen democracy as still the basis of the outcomes that we want for all. Thank you.
Okay.